it's almost like they get this guilt. Like if, like, let's say you're living in their house or something, and they feel like they need to leave the relationship in order to make the other person get better. But I don't necessarily agree with that. That can go either way, and it's probably more likely to go the other way. When you kick someone out or you leave them, their addiction is going to get worse. I can almost guarantee it. It's not going to get better. So I don't think that's a good reason to do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm saying that's not a good reason. If you think, if I kick my husband out, he's going to know I'm serious and I mean business, he's going to get his act together. Let me tell you a little secret. Your husband's secretly wishing you would leave, because then he could do what he wanted to at whatever pace he wanted to do and not have to deal with your naggy butt. That's what he's thinking. He may or may not be saying that, but that's what he's thinking.
This is Rock Bottom with Ryan. No sugarcoating, no filters. The pain, the chaos, the truth. No bullshit. Just recovery.
This episode is brought to you by Sober Strong Apparel. Sober Strong Apparel makes heavyweight premium gear for people who take sobriety seriously. 10% of every order goes back to recovery centers. Sober Strong also runs an impact sponsorship program that puts gear directly into facilities for people just starting out. If you're sober or sober curious, check out SoberStrongApparel.com. Grab some gear, stay sober, stay true, rep the crew. Also, use the code ROCKBOTTOM at checkout for an additional 10% off. That's ROCKBOTTOM, all capital letters, for 10% off at checkout. SoberStrongApparel.com. Love this brand, love the company, love what it stands for. I wear it each and every day. Clothing is stylish, it's good quality, it's definitely worth it. Give it a look, SoberStrongApparel.com. Thanks for watching this episode. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom with Ryan and Rachel. We're here with Amber Hollingsworth today. Amber, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for
Good.
being here. So, this is primarily a recovery-related podcast. We talk a lot about mental health, addiction, a little bit of everything. But today we definitely want to know about what you do, working in recovery and a lot of the stuff that you're doing now. But for starters, we just like to kind of know what your, childhood was like, what it was like growing up, and where you're from and all that stuff.
Well, I know most people who are in the field that I'm in, they come into the field because they're in recovery themselves, which I think is super cool. But I didn't get into the field the traditional way. I kind of landed here by accident. But I grew up in an addicted family, like hardcore, like parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings. I mean, grandparents everywhere, like as in my mom was doing meth with my sister, hardcore. And that was my older sister. But anyways, the crazy thing about it, because people say, oh, well, that's why you got in the field, because you came from this addicted family. And I wish I could say yes, because that's such a good origin story, right? But I actually just accidentally landed here and didn't even realize that my family was so dysfunctional and addicted as it was till I was in the field. Because when you grow up in it, it's normal and you don't even think anything about it. Like you don't even register that that's not like just the normal way everyone's family is.
Wow. So as a child or whatever, was your sister older and she was using with your mom?
I had an older half sister. So we had the same mom, but different dads. And she started having problems with substances in her teens. She got pregnant at 15. And I think the substance problems actually started after that. And she ended up having like a lot of trouble. She had like 6 kids, different dads. It was kind of a mess. And then my mom has had her own struggles with substance use, and somewhere along the way, the two of them started using together. I don't think it was like my mom introduced her to it. I think my mom was sort of on a path, and then she was on a path, and then
Kind
Yeah.
of collided a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So
And how did that affect you as a child, though, growing up? You thought it was normal, you said, but was everything still functioning in the house?
For the most part, I would say, especially when you think about that kind of substance use, I would say it was pretty high functioning for a family that was going through all that, to be honest. My mom and dad separated when I was about in the 4th grade, and we moved to Tennessee. And my mom sort of did okay off and on. Like she went to hair school, she did hair, and then she would kind of struggle. She would have different boyfriends and kind of be in and out of it. But To be honest, I thought my mom was cool. I thought she was a great mom. I still think she passed away when I was in my 20s related to her substance use, but I still think she was a good mom. I will say that probably the biggest thing that affected me was she was just hard to count on. Like she would be late, as in like days late sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that way, it was tough, but I was a pretty independent kid. So I kind of just like parented myself.
Mhm.
And strangely enough to say, I was kind of okay.
Well, naturally pretty independent.
Yeah, I just sort of was independent. At some point when I was a teen, my dad came because he was living in North Carolina and he came to Tennessee and made me and my younger sister go with him. And I was mad because I was like a teenager. I had a job, I had friends, I had a whole life going on, you know? And he said, "You're going to have to come live with us." And like, I didn't want to. I was sort of kicking and screaming. But my mom would be gone for days at a time. But I didn't think that much about it. I just got myself to school. I went to work. I did my own thing. About 2 days after we went to stay with him, he got a call from, like, Child Protective Services saying, "If you don't go get these kids, we're going to." And he's like, "I already got them. Already got them." So,
Wow.
I guess it was pretty bad beyond what I
Wow.
was registering at the time.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, what was your relationship with your dad then? Because it sounds like your mother's was a little complicated, but did you get along with him, or were you just kind of not wanting to live with him?
I did. I mean, I got along with my dad. It wasn't like I had a bad relationship with him. It's just that when you're a teen and you have all your friends and you have your whole life going on, you don't wanna upset your routine and your apple cart. It was really more about that than it was about him, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever start to, experiment with drugs or hanging out with the wrong people or start to rebel a little bit in any way?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I'll tell you. You know how when you're a teen, you sort of rebel? Well, my family was pretty, like, rebellious. So my rebellion against them was like, "I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna make good choices, not like you people."
Ooh.
So
Mm.
I really
Wow.
never went down that road in that way. I had lots of friends who did lots of things, and I hung out and I went to parties and did all things, but I never did the substances. I would just be like the driver. Honestly, like, it never looked that appealing to me when you grow up in it. It's not that glamorous. Kind of like it does. I think when it's not in your house all the time, it just doesn't look glamorous to me, you know? I've seen all the sides of it. I'm like, well, that doesn't look fun. So
Yeah.
Yeah. It gave
my
you the
rebellious was
opposite
to be
appeal.
good. That's kind of embarrassing, right?
Yeah. No, I get it. So did that kind of is that what kind of sent you on the trajectory to do, go to college, and what did you study, and how did that inspire you to do all that?
Well, I put myself through college. I went to college initially to be a teacher, and that was awful. God, I taught high school for like 3 years. That was like really the worst thing I've ever done. And then that was rough. So I decided to get my master's in counseling. I was going to be a school counselor just because I was already in the school system. So it seemed natural. But I couldn't really afford to take off a whole year and be a school counselor intern, and not get paid. It's like that wasn't in the cards for me. So at the last minute, I changed my major to community mental health so I could intern in the summer and still get paid. And so I did that, and they threw me in a substance abuse program. So when I say I ended up by accident, I kind of ended up by accident, just like luck of the draw. But sometimes you just find yourself exactly where you're supposed to be. I tell new counselors, I say, sometimes your specialty finds you. So don't worry about like figuring it out, because sometimes it just lands on you and it's like, this is your thing.
That's so
Wow.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're meant to do it for a reason. I mean, your childhood could have been the exact reason why it brought you to where you are now.
I think so. I think it definitely plays a part and helps me. I don't think it helped me consciously choose it, but I think it helps me be good at it and like it and stick with it.
Yeah.
Did you ever
Yeah.
experience things like growing up, like anxiety and depression with all the how complicated family was and all that?
I don't think so.
But you were able to just push through and get good grades and kind of use that kind of different form of rebellion, like you mentioned?
Like, have you ever heard of like addiction counselors? There's this old thing they teach called the addicted family roles. Like, they talk about like the scapegoat and the lost child. Have you ever heard that before? It's like an old thing. One of those is called like the family hero. Well, that was me. Now it looks super functional because it looks like, oh, like they're so, ambitious or goal driven or whatever. It's its own dysfunction, right? Like this, I have to be perfect. I can't have problems because y'all have problems. Like, it looks good on the outside. It is its own level of dysfunction, but I wouldn't have described it as like anxiety or depression.
So as you kind of got older, got out of college, what was like the start of your career? And How did you did that have to do with mental health and recovery as well?
So, I told you I got that internship in a chemical dependency. It was like an IOP program. And because I had taught high school for a few years, and then I had that little BL internship in substance abuse, the hospital I was interning with, which was a big inpatient facility, they wanted to start an IOP for addicted teenagers. And they thought, oh, Amber used to be a school teacher. She's got 5 minutes over there with the drug addicts. Like, let's make her do it, which
Wow.
was ridiculous, honestly. I was in so far over my head, like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't wanna say that. I was just like, "Oh, they're gonna hire me," I was just excited to have a job, so I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it," and luckily, that program ran at night when, like, there was most of the big important people were going away, and they just sorta, like, let me, like, develop this program, run this program, and figure it out the hard way. Let me tell you what, you can deal with addicted teenagers, you can deal with anything is what I say, like, it was definitely the deep end of the pool, like, I was, like, really, like, I had no business doing it, but I learned a lot from the process.
Wow, so you're kinda thrown in with the wolves, and
Yes.
it was positive to have all the freedom to develop it yourself was
Yes.
probably kinda cool, but it was also pretty intimidating too.
Yeah.
Yes, but I wasn't gonna say that. I told you on the Family Hero, I was gonna do it,
Yeah,
whatever it
exactly.
took.
You didn't want anything to make you look scared, you know?
No, because this is, like, my first big girl job in the field, I wanted to keep it, so but I think that really what initially started out, what I would call is like a disadvantage or a disability, not being in recovery. And honestly, they don't teach you this stuff in counseling school. I know people think they do, but they don't. Like you literally have one class on addiction, which consists of go to 3 12-step meetings and write a report and come tell us what it was like. Like that's pretty much it. And so I didn't have training on it. But and I didn't want people to know, so it's kind of a disadvantage, right? Because people wanna know immediately the first question I get, it doesn't matter if it's a client, if it's a podcast like this, if it's anything, "Are you in recovery?" That is the first question people want, because it's a credibility issue. Well, I didn't have that, man, I wish I did. And I can talk about it so good now, I could totally lie about it, but it just doesn't feel right, so I don't. So I had to figure out how am I gonna get these teenagers to show up this program 3 times a week for 3-hour sessions. These are addicted teens, most of which just got out of, like, acute care, inpatient stabilization, like, hardcore stuff. And
So a lot
so,
of them are in there legally or because their parents sent them or both?
a lot of them were in there because they got into some major mental health crisis. Like, they were, like I don't know if I can say this, but, like, suicidal, you can bleep
Mhm.
that, or overdose or
Mhm.
something major, right? Like, landed on there usually. And this was part of their aftercare program. So to take these teenagers who you can imagine are just difficult because 'cause they're teenagers, right? And they're struggling teenagers, and figure out how to get these kids to show up every week 3 times for 3-hour sessions. And I definitely want them to show up, otherwise it would be real obvious I didn't know what I was doing. So, I focused on really trying to build a relationship with them and just listening, right? Just do what I know how to do, which is try to understand them. And I feel like in the end, that was my blessing and it became my superpower. And what started as a disability of not being in recovery, I think works to my advantage now because sometimes I think when you're in recovery, it's easy to project your story onto people and then not really listen because it's easy to be like, I know what you're thinking. I thought that, I did that, I said that. And I didn't have any thought like that because I was like, I don't know what is going on.
Mhm.
So I listened and built rapport with these kids. And they got sober, and the reason they got sober is because they like coming. And I had this thing set up where you could keep coming for free after you graduate as long as you wanted to, as long as you're staying sober and helping other kids stay sober. They liked coming. They got sober because they wanted to come be mentors in my program, and it grew into this, like, huge, massive thing
That's so
from the
cool.
pure fact that I made it not awful to come.
Wow.
Like, that was it. That's the whole strategy.
I love that. I really do. I really, really do. I have seen on your YouTube, though, I saw a video and I want you to explain a little bit more what
Sure.
you would call a problem drinker and an alcoholic in your own words.
Right. Alcoholism is on a continuum like anything else, right? It's not people say, "Oh, you're an alcoholic, you're not," but it's not really like that, right? We're all somewhere on like a spectrum. And a problem drinker is just what I would call a stage 3 alcoholic, right? You're not dependent. You're not waking up drinking every morning. You don't have to drink every day. It probably looks a little bit more like I have trouble stopping once I start, and then I end up doing crap that I regret. And then I make these promises and I cut it back and then I do it again and they in this whole cycle. Well, that goes on for years, usually until something big happens, like you lose your job, or maybe you have to have a surgery so you go out of work, or COVID happens, or your spouse leaves. Something about your daily routine messes up and you don't have that structure anymore. And then people tend to move from that problematic drinker or addict, you can substitute whatever word, into dependency, because once that gate goes away that was kind of holding the line with it, like having to get up and go to work every day or something like that. If that goes away, people start using more frequently. And then before you know it, now you do have to drink. And so that's how you get from one to the other. So it's not like one's an alcoholic and one's not. One's
Right.
just further down the road than the other, and you're on your path. Yeah. You're just
Mhm.
sooner in the process.
Wow.
Okay.
So I have a question about another video, which I'm
Mhm.
curious about the answer. Why do alcoholics and addicts do bad things?
Because the addiction, as it progresses, it takes over the motivation center of your brain. It's this addiction is really just an obsession. It's not what you do. It's not how much you do of it. I don't ever ask anything about all that because it doesn't matter. Is it interfering with your life? And the reason it interferes with your life is because it takes up more and more and more of your mental energy, your time, and your money to keep this whole thing going. People have no idea how huge this whole internal world is. How much do I have? How am I going to use without people knowing? How am I going to get rid of the evidence? How am I going to find the money to do it without my wife seeing it in my bank account? All these things. I mean, it is like a constant 24/7. You plan everything else in your life around it. Even if you're still functioning, it is going on behind the scenes. And little by little, things just sort of start to drop through the cracks. You forget you were supposed to do something, and then more things and more things and more things until eventually you're all the way there into addiction, but it takes over. And then you lose the ability to sort of juggle all those life balls and the addiction versus just one or two balls that drop, and then more and then more. And then eventually you drop all of them.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. So being addicts and alcoholics ourselves, I remember basing my entire life around my next drink,
Oh
like
yeah.
I'm going to hide it here. I'm going to make this excuse now to go to the restroom to chug a drink or go out
Oh
to my
yeah.
car I have to have 8 drinks before I can go into this family gathering. It's like
Right?
unbelievable how much
Yeah.
it consumed me.
Isn't it
So much
crazy? That's
Yeah.
what I tell my clients.
tradition.
I'm like, your life's gonna get so much simpler. Oh my gosh, you're gonna have all this energy and ability to do all these things. Like you can't even imagine. Like I'm
I
so
know.
excited for them
I know.
because it's so difficult to be in that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how could you help the audience listening understand an addict's mindset?
I feel like if you're not at it, the thing to understand is that, because it kind of goes back to the question you asked, Ryan, about like what makes addicts and alcoholics do bad things. As that obsession grows, you don't mean to do bad things. You're constantly in this like putting out fires, I guess mentality is the way I would put it. And so, like, let's say you take some money from someone. In your mind, you're going to put that back on Tuesday when you get paid before they know it, right? And it's like that all the time. And you end up doing these small things that you think you're either going to fix before it comes out, or you make these like small rationalizations, justifications, because you're in a place of desperation all the time.
Mhm.
And it causes you to do things that you normally wouldn't do. And then you have these regrets, and then you promise yourself, and then it happens again and again and again.
Yep.
That's
On
what
repeat.
it's like.
Same
It's
Yeah.
not
habits, same
fun.
results, right?
No, it's not
Right.
fun.
It's not fun. It's not exciting. It is not fun. It's not glamorous. Right.
We've been there. We've been there.
So I know we're
Yeah.
referring back to a lot of videos that you said and posted, but I just I find a lot of the answers interesting. But one of them, since she and I have both been in different relationships where the Al-Anon had to put up with our, all of our offenses and crazy things we did when drinking and all that. So like, when is it a time to walk away from a relationship with an addict or
Great
alcoholic?
question. Yeah. So a lot of people, the family members, right? The parents, the spouses, the whoever, they get this pressure from the outside that they need to leave the relationship with the addict as a way. They kind of get this messaging of like, you're enabling them, you're keeping them sick, like it's your fault. It's almost like they get this guilt. Like if, like, let's say you're living in their house or something, and they feel like they need to leave the relationship in order to make the other person get better. But I don't necessarily agree with that. That can go either way, and it's probably more likely to go the other way. When you kick someone out or you leave them, their addiction is gonna get worse. I can almost guarantee it. It's not gonna get better. So, I don't think that's a good reason to do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, I'm saying that's not a good reason. If you think, "If I kick my husband out, he's gonna know I'm serious and I mean business, he's gonna get his act together," let me tell you a little secret. Your husband's secretly wishing you would leave because then he could do what he wanted to at whatever pace he wanted to do and not have to deal with your naggy butt. That's what he's thinking. He may or may not be saying that, but that's what he's thinking.
Yeah,
So,
you
this
gotta be
idea of
honest
I'm
with them.
gonna threaten to leave and they're gonna figure it out, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, I'm sure like working with teens and stuff and a lot of people in relationships aren't a lot of them in relationships where there's a codependency factor and sometimes the other person's using too.
Right. So sometimes the other person's using it, but a lot of times when it's the family member, the other person is in this question of should I leave or not? It's more likely either they're not using or they're not using it that level, right? Because
Yeah.
they're like, this is a problem and I need to do something. So a lot of reasons people leave is try to make this other person change, and that is not a good reason to leave. There are good ones. Good
Yeah.
reason to leave would be you're in an unsafe situation. This person is abusing you or verbally, physically, emotionally, whatever. They're stealing from you left and right. Like you feel like you can't like sleep without having your wallet under your pillow or locked up in your trunk at night, or your kids are being super traumatized. Those are good reasons to leave. Another good reason to leave is like when you're in a relationship with someone who has an addiction, it'll make you crazy. It'll make you become addicted to them and you lose your mind. Like, really?
Not even taking care of yourself anymore a lot of the time.
No, and you become this person that you don't recognize anymore, and you're just as, like, sick as they are in some ways. I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying this is what happens. Like, you can't live with it and this not happen to you. It's like a vortex, it sucks you. And so,
Yeah.
if you get to the point where you've, like, lost yourself completely and you've turned into, like, somebody you don't even recognize and you are miserable and you're angry all the time and you're all these things, then that might be a reason to get some distance. And I'm not saying you should leave this person forever. I'm saying you might need to get some distance, at
Mhm.
least, let go of the front row seat is what I call it for a minute. Like, get yourself back because it's maddening and it doesn't make sense and it'll make you feel crazy.
Do you recommend like therapy or a certain other program for people that are significant others of people in addiction? Like, do you recommend Al-Anon or things like that, or what do you do?
I do like Al Anon. I think Al Anon can be really helpful, but I think if you're sort of early in the days of figuring this out, it can feel a little insulting to be told to go to Al-Anon, so I'm always real careful about how I do that because it's like, I'm not the one with the problem. Why do
Mhm.
I need to go do that? First of all, I can't even go do that because 'cause I'm watching the kids and paying the bills and doing all the responsibilities. How am I supposed to
Yeah.
go to a meeting and I'm not the one with the problem? That's kinda how it can feel inside to be told that, so I'm gentle about how I do that. Uh, Being around other people or even just having a counselor, one that understands addiction or something like that, can be super helpful because it can give you perspective in the middle of all this chaos where, like, your head is spinning and just like the person with the addiction is, like, living in desperation, firefighter mode, so are you, and you kinda need to back up a little bit and get some perspective, so anything that helps you do that is helpful.
Right. And I have a question. What about the spouses who do stay and somebody gets in recovery and they continue with their recovery? What advice do you have for them to learn recovery, right?
I think that, one of the craziest things I see is that sometimes the spouse finally does get into recovery, and then as the non-addicted spouse, you think as soon as they get sober, that's gonna fix everything. Doesn't. And there's still all this, like, water under the bridge and these resentments and these problems that sometimes become way higher up into your vision now that the addiction's gone. It's like now we see all the other problems that are still here. And
Mhm.
it's disheartening to see how many relationships fall apart after
I've
the
I have a
person
I
gets
have a
sober.
friend who from my AA meetings who he and his significant other split up as soon as he got sober because there were just so many unfixed problems and wreckage of the past that just didn't fix right away. We all expect,
Right.
even when we get into recovery, we expect these results to happen,
Mhm.
not just with our
Right.
relationships, but with oursels. And there's such a mess to clean up.
Right. And when you're a couple, and one person has an addiction, it changes from a couple dynamic into a parent-child dynamic.
Which is
And
very
even when the
unhealthy.
person gets in recovery, maybe even especially when the person first starts getting recovery, that dynamic can get worse if people aren't careful, because then you're trying to monitor their recovery and check in on them, make sure they're and that doesn't allow the couple to come back to being a couple. It
Yeah.
keeps us on this dynamic, and there's resentment brewed on both sides.
Yeah, I get it. So, how did your career evolve from working with teens into, having a recovery center and what you're doing now? How did that evolve?
So that teen program I ran, it got big, and because I got to sort of design it, I did whatever I wanted. Well, I created this family part of that because one of the lessons I learned super quick is that these parents, God love them, they were like sabotaging everything I was doing, not meaning to. I was like, I'm talking to their kids every week, and all they can talk about is my mom did this, my dad did that, and I'm thinking, gosh, if they doing that, like I could
Yeah.
get somewhere with this kid. So I started this whole, like, parent group part, and then I put parent mentors in charge of them, and they would, like, meet in this other room, kinda like an Al-Anon, but more directive.
Yeah.
More like, "Do this, don't do that," more like, "No, I'm telling you," instead of, like, vague, detached kinda talk, because that was the biggest hindrance to these kids making progress is because 'cause they're so caught up in this freaking power struggle. I'm like, "God, if we could just quit this power struggle, we could figure some things out?" And so I started that program, and I had a lot of success with that.
And what's it called?
That at the time, it was just my intensive outpatient program, that was just the
Okay.
family piece of it, but they would come and meet, and they would have mentors, so they would come long term and help each other and stuff, and so I figured out that family piece and how important it is, and when you can get both sides moving in the same direction, I mean, things just happen and progress so much better, so much faster, and And I did that program, but I also did a lot of other things in hospital. I worked in inpatient, I worked in detox, I worked in acute care, psychiatric crisis. I was patient advocate, I did everything. And I was there for almost 10 years. And it wasn't that the place I was at wasn't good. They were a great facility, but you definitely start to see like the holes in the system, like the bigger system. And one of the big holes was this family piece, right? Like you have someone in detox, they've been there 5 days, you're calling up their parent or their spouse or whatever, and you're saying, "Hey, so and so's coming home tomorrow." And they're like, "What? You're sending them home tomorrow?" And they're like freaking out. "Are you kidding me? Like they're gonna come home and do the same thing." And you're thinking, "Probably." And
Man.
so you start to see these giant holes in the system. And so eventually I just decided, hey, let me go do my own thing. Let me try to do something different. And that's how my practice came about, which is Hope for Families. And we would treat both sides at the same time. So not like just this or just that. It's like, no, if you want me to treat your person with substance abuse problem, you're going to have to come too. Now, I didn't put you in the same room because that's just miserable for everybody, including myself. So we
Yeah.
would split it up, and I would give the family their own person, like their counselor, but we would call it lawyering. So their advocate and the alcoholic would have an advocate. That was usually me. And then we would work as a team to kind of get this system to work better. The 2
Yeah.
counselors, we'd be like, "Well, I need your client to quit doing this." And I'd be like, "Well, we'll quit doing that if you quit reading our journal." And like the counselors, we would like
Mhm.
hash it out behind the scenes or whatever, like lawyering. Most of it happens out of court is what we call it. And that was kind of how my practice set up initially to treat family systems
Yeah.
simultaneously, but not in the same. Is that, yeah.
So basically now you're still working with primarily teens and families?
These days, mostly I work with adults. I see a lot of what I would call like high functioning addicts and alcoholics, a lot of businessmen who drink too much, a lot of lawyers and physicians who look super high functioning, but are like addicts and alcoholics nonetheless.
And
The
like
balls are starting to drop.
are
They
a lot
might
of
not have dropped the work ball yet, but it's coming. I
are
work
a
a
lot of
lot
those
with that
people
population.
so I noticed one of your things you discuss a lot is about talking to addicts in denial. Are a lot of those high functioning people still in denial, and how do you approach those people?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because one of the things I feel like that I'm best at is engaging people who either don't think they have a problem or don't wanna be here because I've spent 20 years doing this. Almost all the people who've winded up in my office didn't wanna be talking to me and didn't think they have a problem. They got leveraged in, drug in, tricked, whatever, all these different ways that they land. So I've developed these really good skills of how do you get through to someone like that? And so I teach families that now on YouTube. I teach them, what do you say and not say? And you bring up a really good point. Like if you're dealing with someone who still looks mostly functioning on the surface, you cannot just keep telling this person that they need help because they're looking at you like you're crazy. I mean, the people I deal with are like surgeons. They're like big deals, like way bigger deal than I am. And you're telling this person you need
Yeah.
help, and they're looking at you like, "What are you
They're like,
talking
why do
about?
I need
$1,000,000
direction?
a
Yeah.
year. I'm this, I'm not," whatever. And you cannot that's not the way to approach someone and to get someone out of denial. So I teach families how to address situations like that without getting themselves in what I call the bad guy role, like playing the villain, which is usually what happens to family. They don't mean to, but what
Yeah.
happens. And that just slows down the process infinitely. Like,
Yeah.
you're slowing it down.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into my next question. What do you tell family members that get blamed for everything from the addict for their addiction?
Stop being the fall guy. Stop biting the hook. Stop being the villain. Your instinct, if this is your family member, is to want to protect your loved one from these external things that could happen, right? Make sure they don't lose their job, they don't flunk out of school, they don't, sit in prison, they don't, go broke and live on the streets. You're trying to protect them from that. But inside the relationship, you're mad at them because you're
Mhm.
constantly yelling at them, you're constantly harping on them, you're constantly criticizing them. And that is the worst formula. And
And that's why
I
you're
teach
supposed to
families
stop
to
telling them they need
reverse
help.
that. Let the world be the bad guy and you be empathetic about it. You be the nice guy. You be the listening ear. Don't fix it, but reverse it. Like, let these balls fall and you be the nice guy. And now you have influence over this person, which is what
And you
counselors
think in
do,
a
right?
lot of ways you kind of wait for them, you kind of letting the addict hit rock bottom on their own without trying to harp on them, make it worse because we know we have a problem. Generally in our hearts, seems
Mhm.
like we know we have a problem.
Yeah, 100%, right? There is a piece inside of there that doesn't like something that's going on. And people label it different. They may say I'm an addict, I'm alcoholic. They may say I'm a problem drinker. It doesn't matter. But they don't like something that's going on. But if you're confronting that person directly, you're putting them in a position to defend themselves. And you never want to make someone say or think anything to defend what they're doing because they're just convincing themselves that much more. And gosh, if they say it out loud, they're really convincing themselves. You don't wanna do that. So you don't wanna ask questions in a way or say things in a way that's gonna make this person say something against that. Like, "I'm not alcoholic because I never did this," or "I'm not addict because I never pawned this," or "beat my girlfriend." You know, you don't wanna get them to defend that because they're convincing themselves every time. You wanna play a different role. You can ask a question like, "Is there anything about it that you don't like?" Like, if someone comes to me and says, I'm gonna drink till the day I die. I'm gonna smoke. I'm gonna do what I call it like the cowboy talk or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Then I'll just say, "Okay, cool." I was like, "Is there anything about it you don't like?" And almost always they'll be like, "Well, I don't like this part and that part." I'm like, "Tell me more about that." Right?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so I find that one little seed that is what I call their own motivator, like a string on a sweater, and then I just pull it gently,
I
and I
like
just
that.
find out more about it. And then guess what? Then they're convincing themselves that they don't like it and
I
that they
like that a
want
lot.
something to be different. So I'm not telling them anything, I'm finding what's in them and pulling it forward.
Wow. So do you kind of give them more knowledge about addiction? Like you talk about eye-opening research on drug addiction and stuff. Do you talk about facts like health-related facts, mental health-related facts that help them start to think, okay, maybe this is something I should quit or it will kill me?
Not in that direct way like you're probably thinking. And I never advise someone like, do not send no articles. Don't send them no Amber video of something you think they need to hear because that's not gonna work. Because again, it's gonna make that person defend or
Rebel.
at bare minimum roll their eyes at you and think, "Oh my god, here
Yeah.
she goes again." Right? It's not
Mhm.
gonna work.
Or like my little
So
sister who was addicted to fentanyl, the more that we came down on her, I mean, the more she
you
would
think
rebel
she
or make
doesn't know that
comments.
can kill her? You don't
Yeah,
need to send an article, okay?
exactly. And
Like,
it did
that's
kill
not
her.
the
It did kill
issue
her. So
here.
that's the crazy part.
It's like you think they don't know smoking's bad for their lungs, like, stop, it's just crazy.
Right.
Like, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. They're
Find
just
that
Yeah.
stating
thing
the
inside of
obvious.
them, right? It's stating the obvious, it's just annoying, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so I don't come at them in that kinda way. When I have little moments where they give me a piece, then I might say, "Oh, yeah, and it's like this and this and this," and I might describe the way it feels. And then they're like, "Yeah." And then they'll tell me more, but I'm not gonna not until they're open to it. Now, sometimes people say, "Do you have a video on this? And do you know anything about that?" And when they're asking, I was like, "Yeah." And I'll give it to them, but not before they're ready.
Yeah, they
Mm.
have to be ready.
Have to be, like, open to hearing it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be open to hearing it for sure. You have to
Mhm.
be ready when you're ready. And
Right.
what types of things do you think that addicts would say to gaslight you
Or
Things that they
manipulate.
won't
or
say to
manipulate?
gaslight you. Well, the family gets the family knows that there's a problem, and they know something's up. But every time they bring it up to the person denies it. And then they say, "You're crazy, and you're making that up, and you're reacting. You always think the worst thing's gonna happen, and your brother was an addict, so you think everyone's an addict." You have all these things. So then the family gets, like, totally obsessed with proving it to make this person admit it. So then they start trying to find the evidence and catch you and follow you and all the things, and they become like little FBI agents with black lights in their purses or something. I don't even know, but like, and so they think if I can present the evidence, then this person is really gonna have to admit it. And
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
when you do that, then you just get gaslit even more. They either just start an argument with you, or they just remind you of how you're not perfect and how you don't trust them anyway, and now you're at fault because you don't trust them, and now
Yeah,
and how that's old and that has been there. I mean, it's all these things, and then you try harder to prove it. I'm like, "What are you doing? This is not gonna work."
that
Like,
is so
Yeah.
true
stop the
too.
madness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever struggle with the parents, as far as like trying to tell them, hey, there's a lot of ways you're enabling your kid, and how do you get them out of that thought process? To, like, I'm sure they get defensive at times, right? When it comes to the
Right.
enabling factor.
Well, I don't just like I wouldn't confront an addict or an alcoholic in a way to make them feel defensive, I wouldn't make a family member feel defensive either, because everybody's just doing the best they can, honestly. And the thing about it is everybody else is giving them grief about enabling, right? All you're doing, your family, you're just surviving just like the addict is, right? You can say all day long, like, "Quit helping your husband, this and that, you're enabling." Okay, but if he loses his job and he falls, what do you think is gonna happen to his family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that simple, right? If my kid has kids and I have grandkids and my daughter's an addict and I'm not paying her electric bill, what do you think is gonna happen to my grandkids? Like, it's not as simple as everyone
Yeah.
wants to make it out to be with the "I'd tell you what I'd do,"
Mhm.
whatever junk.
Yeah.
And so I just empathize with them and I say, "Hey, I totally hear you with that."
Yeah. You
And
take
so
away a lot of that stuff, and all of a sudden things do fall apart even more.
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily make them better. That's the whole thing as addiction. The definition is somebody keeps doing something despite the consequences. So there's no, like, consequence necessarily it's gonna make someone change, and so, first of all, I just validate the family for that. But mostly, I yes, people think about enabling, they think, "Oh, it's giving someone money or fixing things for them or mostly, like, letting them live under your roof," or something like that. Sure, those things are enabling, but they're not nearly as enabling as playing the bad guy villain role. So let me explain why I say that.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can give somebody $20, it's an addict, and they're probably gonna go use or drink or do whatever they're gonna do with that money. Fine. And then I know people will tell you, "Oh, what if they go and use and that kills them? That's on you." I'm like, "Dude, if that happens, that's not on you. That's on the addiction. Like, stop. $20 never made or break anybody's addiction." So, I don't suggest you
Yeah.
give somebody thousands of dollars a week who has an addiction, but if they're saying, "I'm starving," you give them $20, whatever, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. But if you act like a lunatic and you stand in front of the door and you get in a fist fight with them and you threaten this and you do that and you act like a lunatic, you've just given them the emotional currency to continue to make bad decisions for years. $20 is gone in 15 minutes. One crazy lunatic moment where you just lose your crap and you just say all those mean things that you've been holding in, they will literally remind themselves of that every day for 20 years and remind you of it. And that's the emotional currency that continues to keep it going, right?
Yeah.
Because as long as they can focus on how awful you are, they don't have to focus on what they're doing. So
Right.
don't give them that. That to me is so much more important than whether or not you paid their electric bill this month or whatever. I'm not saying you
Right.
should give them money. I'm just saying, like, it's not the end all be all that people think. Like, rich people get sober every day too. So
Yeah.
it's more complicated than that.
And how would you suggest that a family member or a loved one sets boundaries with an addict or an alcoholic?
I suggest that family members and loved one mostly set boundaries with themselves. Most people confuse boundaries, and when they say the word boundary, what they're really thinking in their mind is a rule that they're setting for someone else.
Mhm.
Like, for example, you might say to someone, "Don't call me after 5 o'clock because I know you're gonna be drunk and I don't want to hear you." That's a rule. That's not a boundary. A
Yeah.
boundary is you tell yourself, you don't even have to tell the other person, "I'm not gonna answer their calls after 5 p.m. because they're probably drunk. They're gonna be on the phone for 2 hours, and I don't got time to hear that mess." And you don't even have to say it to them. That's a boundary. See the difference?
Mhm.
Boundaries are for you. They're not for the other person. Boundaries don't make that other person better, but they can protect yourself. So should you set them? Yes, but you have to get your head wrapped around what is a boundary actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
It can be confusing.
Yeah, no, you explained it actually really well.
Yeah, I
What
like
are
to say
some
you can. Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, you go first.
I was just gonna
Completely
say
separate question.
the way I help people remember is I'm like, you can build a fence around your own backyard. That's cool. But your neighbor's gonna get real mad if you try to build a fence around their backyard. So that's the
Mm.
way I like to remember.
That's
Wow.
good.
So what are some emotional manipulation tactics that they should never tolerate?
I don't know if there's a particular emotional manipulation tactic that someone shouldn't tolerate. I think it's helpful to know what they are so you know when they're being used against you.
Mm.
Like a really common one is you confront someone because they lied or did something or whatever they did, and you call them out, whether you did it nice or mean or however you did it. And then they start a fight with you, picking a fight to deflect the situation. And you don't even realize it's happened to you. So one thing I tell families to do is I'm like, first of all, don't ask a question that you know the answer to. You're just setting yourself up to be lied to and you're just going to get mad. Like, don't say, have you been drinking? I see that you've been drinking. If you're going to say it at all, which I don't even know that you should, but don't
Yeah.
ask the question because they're going to
Yeah.
lie. It's like a reflex. They can't even
The
help.
last thing we like to do is be accused of things. It just makes
So-
us pissed off and we go
Yeah.
drink more.
Then I'm going to
Right.
deny it.
Right. And don't get into the weeds and the details of it, because then they're like, no, I'm not. And then you're like, yes, you are because you were with Johnny and then this, and then you went to this bar and you spent this much money. Because you're going to say one little detail that's wrong. And when you do, they're going to pick up on that one little detail that's wrong and say, no, it was Jimmy. See, you always think you always think it's Johnny, but it's not Johnny. And then next thing you know, y'all having
Can't
this
stand the
argument
word
about
always
this
and never.
thing over here. And they just deflected you. So, like, you don't
You're
have
setting
to
yourself
prove
up.
it. You don't have to give the details. You don't have to present the evidence. So don't set yourself up for that manipulation, I guess is what
That's
I would say.
true. Yeah. You're kind of feeding into it and asking for it sometimes.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Wow.
you get it. You totally get it. Love speaking to
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
To help someone overcome addiction that's in it currently, and then they
Mhm.
want to make amends, how do
Mhm.
you, what type of advice for that person do you have? Not just the families, because they want to make amends and make everything correct, right? Not everybody's going to just come around.
Well, the amends question is sort of complicated. So I would have to ask you questions like, tell me the circumstance. Like, I want to make amends to my wife, or is like, they're asking me, is it time for me to make my amends? Or what do I think about amends? Like, I had a client ask me a question about this like last month, and he said he had a resentment toward a friend of his who tried to hook up with his wife, basically. And he was like, I think I need to make an amends. And I said, why do you need to make an amends? And he said, well, because he did this and I have these bad feelings. And I'm like, I don't know that that's going to make things. I'm trying to play it out. I'm like, well, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? What's this person? They're going to like admit it? They're going to deny it? Is that really going to? And so sometimes it's confusion about the situation. I'm like, you don't need to make an amends because you have a resentment. You need to make an amends if you did something, right? That's on your heart, right? So a lot of times it's like, that's why I say, what's the situation? Like, I would want to know, like, give me an example maybe, and I could help.
I am so sorry for stealing all of your money out of your savings account when I was in active addiction.
Okay. One of the things that helps the other person most is just for you to acknowledge what they've known the whole time. Like, literally, you're just admitting to it and saying it is huge because they already probably know it, right? Like, and they probably ask you about it 400 times and you lied about it. So for you to just say, I lied to you about this and I did do that. And when you asked me, I totally gaslit you and I did that for years and I shouldn't have. Like, just to be able to like own it is so meaningful to the other person because you've probably been telling them that they're crazy for like a long time and that you didn't do that one thing. And so just owning it and then being able to not just say, I did this, but and I know it affected you, fill in the blank. That must have made you feel blank. That puts you in a really bad position with your family. And being able to articulate how that affected the other person, that's the other massive. If you can put those two pieces together, that is going to help that other person feel heard and understood. Yeah, it's going to go a long
Th-
way.
Is the timing of amends just on a case to case basis? Because sometimes you can make amends right away, but sometimes are you telling people this person clearly, depending on how much you've hurt them, isn't going to be ready until you're sober for 5, 6 months or until you've worked on these aspects of yourself? Like, how much does that play a role in it?
I think sometimes people should wait a bit till they have some stability under them. Otherwise, because I'm like, what if you make the amends today and you struggle and you relapse tomorrow? Like, you probably
Yeah.
already done that 5 times anyways, right? So, like, let's give it a minute. Let's make sure you're, pretty stable before you go and
Because you got to be able to accept failure if it doesn't work out.
right, because it's still very raw for you if it's early on, and it's still very raw for them, and you may not even have the emotional stability to tolerate it if they're accusatory or if they don't take it well or if they throw some more criticism on top of you when you're trying to make it better. You gotta be in a good enough place to be ready to take that on.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give if they are not ready to give you the amends? They're not ready to take your apology, but you really are sorry.
In my mind, amend is for you and not for them. Like a boundary. It's for you, it's not for them, right? It's about getting it off your heart, and so it's not so much how the other person responds to it, it's just about cleaning up your side of the street so that you're not carrying that, so that you don't have to, like, avoid the family reunion every year because you don't wanna see Uncle Jack because that thing's hanging out there. You're not scared when you walk into the Walmart, you're gonna run into, you know, cousin Sarah or whatever because you flirt with her boyfriend or whatever happens, like, it makes it where you don't have to live and run and hide because you've owned your stuff and you've looked it in the eye and you don't have to have that shame following you around anymore. Dealt with
Right.
it, you faced it, and you can move forward regardless of how the person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for people struggling out there, you don't think that rehab's the only way to recovery? There's a lot of other facets that you can go down.
That's right. I think I'm not opposed to rehab. I think sometimes if it's to the level where you need to get out of your environment, because 'cause I've seen that a lot, like, your environment is not conducive to recovery, whether it's a crazy family situation or you live with all your using friends or everyone you know is doing drugs or whatever. Sometimes you literally need to remove yourself long enough to get your feet under you. That is absolutely a thing. Sometimes you need detox. It's for sure, like, medically a thing. Ultimately, recovery is about learning to live real life clean and sober. So rehab and stuff like that is nice to stabilize you, and I'm for it. But if you can do it without going, like, to inpatient, great, because ultimately we gotta learn how to, like, work and be sober, raise kids and be sober, deal with school and be sober, all those things. We have to live life and figure out sobriety. When you're in an inpatient facility, you're not living real life, right? Like, you're protective or everything you can't use, so you don't even think about it that much because you can't get a hold of it. You don't have I mean, you may have some temptations, of course, things happen or whatever, but it's not the same. And you're spending all day, talking about your feelings and being validated by everyone else that's in there. What's gonna happen, when you talk about stuff in your group and everyone's like, "Yeah, man, me too." And you go home and you talk about stuff and your wife's pissed at you and
Yeah.
your family's pissed at you and they're not all with the loving and I get it and I understand, like, it's a whole different ballgame. So I'm a fan of recovery in real life because that's what sticks. Like developing those coping skills, dealing with relationships and stresses.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. So,
Mhm.
what is, What is a 24-hour period like now, and how much are you really working with adults compared to teens now? Is it mostly adults? And what huge piece of advice would you give to people struggling right now?
For me, are you saying what's 24 hours for me? Like what's a day in the life like? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
day in the
Okay.
life, and then one piece of advice.
Well, these days my life is sort of different because I spend about 3 days a week either making content, being on podcast, managing all the online stuff, and I spend 2 days a week, I still see clients, like on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I see clients, and I feel like that helps me to keep my head in the game, and it constantly reminds me, "Oh, I need to talk about this," because this is a common thing. Helps me to stay fresh. So I still see clients all days on those days. The other days, I make content. Mostly who I see now are mostly adults, and most of them, I would say, are fairly high functioning, and I'm trying to help them before they hit a bottom or before they have to go to rehab. Some of them I see right after coming out of rehab, but my goal is to help people before they lose everything. That's kind of my big mission is you don't have to burn every bridge. You don't have to hit a bottom. That's why my channel's called Put the Shovel Down. Just put your shovel down. You're done when you put your shovel down. Like, you can be done today. And
Right.
so that's my main message. The other thing we do is we do a lot of consultations, and we have some online courses and stuff for family members on what to do, what to say and what not to say. It's not just like an Al-Anon, like patch and back up and cross your fingers and hope that they figure it out. It's like, no, say this, do this, say it exactly this way. Let's practice it. Say it in this tone at this moment, and then don't say nothing else. Like we tell you exactly what to say and do to help you because this whole idea that you're powerless, I'm like, that's not acceptable when this is your child. That's not acceptable when this is like you want something else. So we try to help families with that. And my one piece of advice for people who are out there struggling with addiction is, dude, the grass is greener. Like, your life is so like, I'm telling you, like, your life's gonna be so much simpler. You're gonna like yourself again. You're gonna like regular things again. People don't believe me when I say that. I'm like, I know you don't. You think life's gonna be horrible and boring. It's gonna be terrible, but you're actually gonna, like, regain the brain capacity to like other stuff again. And I like to get people, like, excited about what it's like, 'cause I'm like, "Dude, you don't even know how miserable you are." Like, you don't even know. You're not even gonna know until you're out of this, like, 3 months, and you're gonna be like and you're gonna tell me, like, "Amber, oh my god, like, that was terrible." I'm like, "I know." So, I'm not like, "Oh, you're bad, you gotta get sober." I'm, like, excited for
Yeah,
life is about to get 100 times better for you.
Yep.
great.
Yeah.
The show being called rock bottom, and you saying to put the shovel down. So people basically the concept is stop digging so you don't hit rock bottom.
Mm.
Yes, that's the whole concept is and I love what you said earlier, Ryan, which is like, deep down, we know, right? And if you can say the right thing to someone and you can pull those pieces out, you can get people to stop. I'm a firm believer. I've been doing it for a lot of years because it's already in there. You just have to harvest it forward.
For sure.
Rachel, do you have any other questions?
I don't have any more questions. You just seem to really get it. You studied it as well, but you really seem to understand and get it from a different perspective. And I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this side of the perspective because have we had that
No,
yet?
no.
No.
It's really nice to have that perspective. So we really
Hmm.
appreciate it. Is
Thank
there
you. You guys
anything?
asked a lot of good questions. I felt like I was taking like board exams or something.
Oh, I know. We were
These are
interested
good
because we
questions.
knew you had a lot of knowledge and a lot of opinions on different aspects of recovery. And from your perspective, not being an addict, it also just is really cool to hear it that way from that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and
we
I
appreciate it.
appreciate you guys saying I get it because it means a lot coming from people who are in recovery themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're helping a lot of people just like us. And I've been to rehab and I've been to therapy and worked, IOP and all that stuff. And I just think, we need this, and you're making a huge difference in people's lives. You're saving their lives, So
Same,
it's
right
huge.
back at you guys. Same to
Thank you
you.
so much. Yes, and we like to say, if we made a difference in one person, we consider that a success. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We really are grateful that you came on and shared everything and answered. I know we poked and pried with a lot of questions, but you answered everything great. So thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Rock Bottom with Ryan. No bullshit, just recovery.